So at this point, I'm assuming that you've downloaded the GNS3 executable file, the application, and you've also downloaded at least one Cisco iOS software image. So now we're going to open up that executable file from GNS3, and I'm going to go through something called the setup wizard, which is a series of steps you have to go through to get GNS3 fully up and working. Now there's actually quite a lot to talk about during the setup phase here, so I'm going to divide this into two videos, and this is going to be part one of that series. So let's start with unpacking that executable, or that GNS3 file. So in my particular case, I've downloaded GNS3 right here to this GNS3 file. And you can see I've got various flavors of it. As of this recording, version 1.4.4 is the most recent version of GNS3. So I'm just going to go ahead and double click on that. And it brings me to the very first page of the GNS3 setup wizard. So I'll click on next. I will agree to the license, and I will let GNS3 install where it wants to. Okay, so here's where I want to spend a little bit of time. If you are like me, and when you get something like this that wants to install a bunch of stuff on your system, you might want to know what all of these things are and if they're mandatory and what they do. So let me just spend a little bit of time talking about each one of these things. Let's start with WinPCAP. WinPCAP is simply a driver. It connects to your NIC card, and it allows your NIC card to capture every single Ethernet frame it sees and then send those Ethernet frames to some sort of application, like maybe Wireshark or some other kind of packet sniffing application. So it puts your NIC card into what's called promiscuous mode. Without WinPCAP, your sniffing program wouldn't do anything. It wouldn't be able to capture anything. Or I should say, it would only be able to capture files that are sent to you. In other words, Ethernet frames are sent directly to your laptop and broadcast frames. Any other Ethernet frames that your Ethernet card sees, it normally ignores those frames, it discards them. Well, with WinPCAP, it has the ability to actually collect everything it sees and then send it to Wireshark. Wireshark is a packet sniffing tool. If you've never actually seen Wireshark before, this is an example of what it looks like. After you've done a capture, you can see every single frame that your NIC card has collected. And when you can open up these things, you can see every single field within every single header. And this is a great, useful tool when you're learning about networking protocols. You know, there's no better way to learn about how OSPF works or how RIP works than by actually seeing the packets, capturing them, and seeing every single field in there, seeing when a packet generates or triggers another packet in response. And a packet sniffing tool like Wireshark, and there are others out there as well, is a great tool to do that. Now, along with this, when you capture your files, now you might be wondering, well, what's Wireshark have to do with GNS3? Because GNS3 is creating a virtual networking topology. I'm not dealing with real routers with real cables here. Well, the nice thing about this is because GNS3 is bundled in, I should say Wireshark is bundled into the GNS3 download. Once you create your virtual topology of your routers connected via serial interfaces or Ethernet interfaces or whatever they are, you can right-click on any router. I'll show you how to do this. And there's a capture option. You select which interface you want. You could capture off of serial interfaces if you want to. And then it actually captures all the packets on that interface and displays them in Wireshark. Now, where this is really totally cool and useful is, you know, imagine you had real routers in a real lab, okay, and they were all cabled up via Ethernet or serial interfaces. How would you actually capture packets in that environment? Well, one way is you'd have to like purchase a hub, an Ethernet hub, install it in between two routers, connect your PC to that hub, and then your PC would have the ability to see all the packets going back and forth between those routers. That's great if you're talking about Ethernet. But what if I want to capture stuff on a serial link? Like if I want to see what frame relay headers look like or what PPP headers look like. Can't do that with a hub. Kind of hard with a back-to-back serial cable to capture that stuff. But here in the GNS3 virtual environment, it's so easy to do so. Now the other thing you're going to want to do is once you capture your various files, you're going to want to save them. You know, just click File and Save As. And the reason for that is because you will see here, in addition to Wireshark, the GNS3 application downloads the SolarWinds Response Time Viewer. And what that does is with that tool, you can import your capture file that you got from Wireshark and then click on Analyze. And it just takes a couple of moments here. And what this does is it takes all the traffic that Wireshark created and sort of sorts it and categorizes it by different high-level categories you can see here. And if you highlight one of these, or if you just actually mouse over it, you can see you get a lot more detailed information about the average network response time, the average application response time. So this is also a really great tool to just get a high-level snapshot of what's going on, not only in your virtual environment, but you can use this in a real network as well to see, what's going on in my network. Is there stuff going across my cable that I didn't expect to be there? So the SolarWinds Response Time Viewer is a great tool for that purpose. In addition to that, you get Dynamips. Have to have Dynamips. Dynamips is the engine that creates your emulated routers, so that's got to be in there. And then you've got QEMU. I'm not really going to talk about QEMU. That's really for people who like virtualizing their using like a virtual machine. Like if you want to have GNS3 running with VMware or VirtualBox or something, then this whole QEMU thing gets involved. But I'm not going to go into that in this sort of basic tutorial video right here. Now the next thing, but you will want to include it, don't uncheck it, just leave QEMU checked as it is, because later on you might want to use that in your studies. VPCS, awesome tool. This stands for the Virtual PC Simulator. So when you create your network topology within GNS3 of your routers connected to each other, you might want to have some PCs connected to those routers. For example, maybe you need something to generate traffic, maybe UDP traffic or TCP traffic or ICMP traffic going through those routers, because you want that traffic to go through the routers, and maybe you want to test out your access list to see if they're actually working as you expect. Or you want to test out your quality of service policies to see if they're working as you expect. Well, VPCS, the Virtual PC Simulator, is a great tool for doing that. You can just drop these virtual PCs into your network, connect them to your routers, and then the virtual PCs, you can tell them, start a UDP traffic stream, start a TCP traffic stream, and you can select like the port numbers and all kinds of stuff, which is a great tool for testing simple stuff in your GNS3 virtual topology. So fortunately for us, that is built in. CPU limit is just a little program that, like it sounds, it sort of helps GNS3 to work with your CPU so it doesn't consume too many CPU resources. Then, of course, you have the GNS3 application itself. Got to have that in there. And it also comes bundled in with SuperPuTTY. Now, when you're working with the Cisco iOS command line, you have to have some application to display that command line. We call that a terminal application. And there's lots of terminal applications out there, but SuperPuTTY is one example of a terminal application. It comes bundled in here with GNS3. Now, if you are used to using a different terminal server application, like for example, Hyperterminal or Secure CRT or something, you can. GNS3 does give you the flexibility to use whatever terminal application you want. It's just that it defaults to PuTTY. And then lastly, there's Tight VNC Viewer, and that's more of an advanced topic. I'm not going to get into the details of that. So let's just go ahead and let it default to all this stuff, and I'll click Next, and I'll let it default to the file that it wants to, the folder. Now in this particular case, it detects that when PCAP is already running on my machine, it's already installed on my machine, so I don't need to install it again. But if you don't get this message, you definitely want to have WinPCAP installed on your laptop. So for example, if you've never used Wireshark before, if you've never had a reason to sniff Ethernet frames or packets, you might not have WinPCAP on your laptop, and you might need to install it. In this case, I'm going to cancel out of it. Now right now it's downloading Wireshark. I'm going to cancel out of Wireshark right here. Going to quit. And I'm going to cancel out of this because I already have Wireshark. I don't need to download it. So yeah, I will abort that. I also already have the response time viewer. I just showed you an example of that. So I'll just cancel out of that as well, just to speed things up here for this video. And then now it's downloading everything else, which will be pretty quick. And in just a moment here, we should be, there we go, setup was completed successfully. And now I click Next. And now I have the option to get a free license of the SolarWinds standard tool set. You're definitely going to want this. Lots of tools available for free, which is awesome. So you want to click Yes. And then when you hit Next, it'll actually bring up a web browser or a new tab in your web browser that allows you to go to the SolarWinds website and register for that free license, which will then be emailed to you. And then lastly, we can start GNS by hitting the Finish button here. So at this point, I'm going to go ahead and stop this video right here. This concludes part 1 of the setup. And in part 2 of the setup, the next video, I'm going to click the Finish button here. We're going to see what the next steps are to, for example, import Cisco iOS into GNS so it has something it can work with. So we'll see that in the next section.